Hello, I'm local Democracy Reporter Emma Draper, and I've been speaking to Leader of Douglas Council Claire Wells about a new policy to stop zero rating empty properties. The local authority will now force owners of empty or dilapidated buildings to pay rates, unless the building is demolished. Councillor Wells says it's not fair for ratepayers to pick up the expense for empty houses. So, what does this new policy mean for empty properties? Can you give a little background to the policy?
Just over a year ago now, we brought in a new policy because we wanted to ensure that people that had properties in Douglas were paying rates, and we were finding that if properties were empty or they were getting rates discounts or not paying rates at all, and that has a very detrimental effect on every other property in Douglas because obviously we have costs that we need to cover, and if there are properties that aren't paying rates, then everybody who is has to pay their rates, and it's more. So we had a look at the profile of people that were not paying rates, and we decided that at the time we were going to put a stop at 12 months for people who had inside works that they needed to do and 18 months for those for external, and that was the policy. That policy was challenged very recently, and it actually came to light that we were not in a position to actually be giving rates discounts at all on properties. So we've now changed it to reflect that there was no legislation in place for us to be giving rates discounts, to say that anybody who has got a property within Douglas City will now be paying rates, and there'll be no discounts given.
This policy seems to have a focus on sort of empty properties and dilapidated properties. Is that something you've wanted to see happen for a while?
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, what are we short of on the Isle of Man? We're short of housing. Why on earth would we be encouraging people to keep properties empty? We should be encouraging people to invest in their properties and make sure that people can live in them. We're short of housing. What can we do to make that better? And at the end of the day, if you're not paying rates for something, what is your incentive to make it better? And I know that the government are currently doing an empty properties consultation where they'll be looking at ways that to incentivise people to do that, and that will be actually by charging them more. And I totally agree with this, because at the end of the day, why are we building new properties in our green spaces when we've got plenty within our city centre? And also, to be fair, throughout the Isle of Man, there are empty properties and people tend to buy them. And because they don't have to pay rates, it's not costing them anything. And they just let them sit there and rot. And do we really want that in our city centre? I know I don't, and I'm pretty sure that none of our council members do either. And what's really important to remember, that this is a tax on a property. It's not, you're not paying for what you get, it's a tax on a property. We use that money to pay for lighting and waste disposal and all the rest of it, but that's not what you're actually paying for. We're talking about the tax on your actual property. So if you're not using the facility, that's your choice. But if it was me and I owned a property and I was having to pay for it, I'd like to make sure that was actually getting some money back from it, and that's the incentive. Let's make sure that the properties that are out there that need renovating and can be used, get them invested in and get them using, so that we've got people who, it was spoken about earlier on in the council meeting today, there's 250 people on a housing waiting list. They need properties to live in. Why are we only looking towards the government or ourselves, in fact, to provide housing when we've got private properties out there that need some investment and could be made available for people?
How will residents in Douglas benefit from this new policy?
Rates are paid by everybody, and if people aren't paying rates, then that falls on the people who are, and that's just not fair. So how will they benefit? We'll be getting money in from all the people that are not currently paying rates, and that will go towards providing better facilities for people. We can invest more in our town. There are lots of things that we can do with the money that comes in, and to make sure that when we get to the end of the year or when we're doing our budgeting for next year, that's all taken into consideration, and it should have a great impact for everybody.
Where does legislation from central government and Tynwald fit in with this policy?
So at the end of the day, there is no legislation for giving no rates to a property. What there is a zero rated. You can have your property zero rated, and that is the policy that we've just brought in today. So there has to be no property there at all. It has to be demolished under the planning application. If it's demolished and it's not there, then there would be no rates on it. The government itself, or through the tribunal, they can give you up to a 20% discount on your rate, but that is, there are particular circumstances within which that would be granted. But as it stands today, there is no legislation in place for this. This is a positive news story, and I know that there are people out there who own properties who won't see that. But for every resident of the Isle of Man, really, not even just Douglas City, but obviously we're talking about Douglas City today because that's who we represent. This is a positive news story. We want people to be living in Douglas. We don't want dilapidated buildings. We don't want empty buildings. We want investment into our city. We want to encourage people to live here, and this is one of the many steps that we are taking towards encouraging that. I don't think so. I think this is a positive news story, and I know that there are people out there who own properties who won't see that. But for every resident of the Isle of Man, really, not even just Douglas City, but obviously we're talking about Douglas City today because that's who we represent. This is a positive news story. We want people to be living in Douglas. We don't want dilapidated buildings. We don't want empty buildings. We want investment into our city. We want to encourage people to live here, and this is one of the many steps that we are taking towards encouraging that.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.